Stevie, thank you very much indeed for calling us, and please call us again. Really informed discussion from you tonight. 08085 909 693. Now, next, the government says everyone flying to the UK must take a COVID test before their departure. Nigeria will also be added to the red list because of a number of Omicron cases that have been traced there. Airlines UK, which represents carriers flying to and from the country, says blanket restrictions do not work because the variant is already in the UK. Stephanie Hayden is a lawyer whose work is in both South Africa and the UK. Hello, Stephanie.
Yes, good evening, Stephen.
Good evening. And Bendita McManus. Bendita, you've got a company, Kiva Travel, specialises in business and long-haul flights. And I hear, Bendita, you are not happy. Hello, Benedita. Not there. Stephanie.
Good evening.
As I was saying, you work in both the UK and South Africa. Give me your response to this travel change of policy.
Here we go again, Stephen. To coin a phrase, it's mumbo jumbo. South Africa and countries in sub-Saharan Africa generally are being discriminated against by the UK government for no logical reason. The Omicron variant is present throughout Europe, indeed present throughout the Northern Hemisphere. But it seems to me, focusing on South Africa, that because South Africa did the right thing and reported the variant when they discovered it in South Africa a few weeks back, that South Africa specifically and Southern Africa generally are now being targeted for these ridiculous restrictions at the height of the South African holiday season and tourist season, ruining holidays and also Christmas family reunions. South Africa and the UK have many links, and it's my argument that these restrictions cannot be justified.
Benedita, I think you are with us now, is that right?
Yes, I am, Stephen. I can hear you.
Okay, good stuff, Benedita. Thank you for talking to us tonight. I was just talking to Stephanie there, who's a lawyer who works in both South Africa and the UK. When I was introducing you, Benedita, I know you couldn't hear me, but I was suggesting you're pretty angry about this announcement regarding Nigeria. Tell us why.
Yeah, I'm just livid. I think, as I said when I was on one of your prior shows, look, this is an overreaction. Yes, I think the government are trying to make up for all their errors, but they're going a little bit too far with it now. What's happening now is becoming a catalyst. Other countries will follow suit. The industry is still not recovered. For aviation and travel, this is a big blow. And for me on a personal level, it's now put me in a dilemma where I'm to and fro about how I attend my father's funeral. So it's affecting me on a personal level now. Waking up and hearing this news today has now put me in a situation where I'm sure many of our other customers and people in general, do I see family at Christmas? Do I attend things like funerals, or do I go and be with sick people right now? Do I have £2,000 to stay in an isolation hotel? I was traveling with my 9-month-old. That is not something that I'm comfortable to do with a 9-month-old, and I'm leaving my 4-year-old behind to make this trip because it's my father's funeral. Now I'm left having to make a decision of whether or not I attend. There's going to be thousands of people in a similar situation. Christmas is peak time for Nigerians. They go home in droves. That's just the reality of it.
But that's the point, isn't it? To be fair to the government, Christmas is peak time for travel, peak time for mixing, and that dilemma, Benedita, of a government trying to tackle a variant which they don't know enough about, they don't know what faces this in the next few weeks and months. So what can they do?
I think, so from my own personal experience, we've actually been out to Dubai and had COVID. This was last Christmas. We were in Dubai and caught COVID and had to isolate there. There's so many different options available to them. There's isolation hotels, completely agree. But there was other measures in place. As an example, friends of ours in Abu Dhabi were put on I'd call it like a tracker. They were given a watch upon arrival, and the watch tracked their movement. And as long as they stayed within their property, there was no issue. They were allowed out to conduct their relevant tests And at the end of the isolation period, their watch was taken off and they went back to normality. There are other ways to deal with this. The government have chosen, as far as I can see, an easy out. They've made it the traveller's problem. And it's a case of getting an isolation hotel. And I'm telling you, the numbers of people that are going to be impacted by this, if they still commit and travel, the isolation volume they can't cope with this. We knew that last week there was issues where people couldn't get back in the country because there wasn't enough hotels. So they're setting a situation up that they can't deal with, that they can't resource against. There's got to be other ways to be able to travel safely, to have controls, because we're not against having controls, but this isn't necessarily the right solution. That would be my challenge.
Stephanie, you've described this decision as racist. Is that right?
I prefer to use the word discriminatory, Steve, and I don't want to, up the temperature here. But in my view, it is discriminatory. We have Omicron in this country. There's cases in Scotland. There's cases here in London. There's cases in continental Europe. It's already here. And no matter how many red list hotels you open, how many countries in southern Africa you add to this red list, it's not going to make a jot of difference. It's already here. And I'll go further than that. Here's a big clue. I was last in South Africa 3 weeks ago. I got back just as this variant was being found in Gauteng. Yet, here we are 3 weeks later, and the restrictions in South Africa itself are still at level 1. And what do those restrictions include? It includes mandatory masks in all settings, indoor and outdoors. And we're not talking about enforcement with just fines here, Stephen. We're talking about enforcement ultimately with prison.
But when you say, Stephanie,
sorry?
But when you say this is discriminatory, it's not, to be fair, as if the government is picking on countries randomly. They are trying to react quickly to a variant that they do not know enough about, and they are trying to make a balanced decision based on risk to the UK population. Are they not?
Stephen, let's say for a moment you're correct with that hypothesis, and I don't agree with it actually. Why aren't we doing that for Belgium? Why aren't we even, and I would never call for this, but taking your hypothesis at its highest, why aren't we bringing in tough travel restrictions between the 4 nations within the UK itself? Because there's cases in Scotland, there was cases at a Steps concert, for goodness sake, that were announced yesterday. What happened here is South Africa did the right thing, simply because they have a surveillance system which is as good as any that you will find in the West, including here in the UK. And what did they get repaid with? Strangulation of their tourist economy at the main point of their tourist year. And it's okay saying, oh yes, balanced approach, we need to be careful. Pity we didn't do that with China 2 years ago, isn't it? It's ridiculous. The genie's out of the bottle, Stephen, and I think this is just COVID theatre. The government is on, 6s and 7s. Travel, don't travel. Grant Shapps 2 days ago, we're not bringing in pre-departure tests. 6 p.m. again on Saturday, we're bringing in pre-departure tests. They are incompetent, and it is ridiculous, in my opinion.
Well, the other matter, Benedita, sorry, that I've brought up earlier in the program. I cannot, for the life. I'm not allowed to give an opinion, but I think I'm allowed to be a sensible human being and be incredibly curious as to when someone does arrive in the UK, how they are required to self-isolate at their home until they get a PCR test result. But there is no channeling them to their home through an airport. So they can literally arrive. Think about this. They can arrive in any British airport. They could sit there all day with as many people as they want in that airport. They can go for dinner. They can then get on a tube train with hundreds of others. There's no requirement for them to try to, get a taxi home, be picked up. Let's channel some of those passengers who are awaiting a PCR test in a certain way. None of that. And then suddenly when they get home, they've got to self-isolate and not go out the door until the result comes in. Could someone on this planet tell me how that's logical?
It's not. It's not. It's COVID theatre. I mean, Stephen, can I just give you one example of the stupidity of this whole system? Going back 6 months ago when South Africa was still on the red list, I was out in South Africa for nearly a month and I had to return to the UK. I was fully vaccinated and I had the NHS COVID pass and the NHS printed vaccination certificate. I had to fly from Johannesburg to Warsaw. I could walk into Warsaw with my NHS vaccination certificate. I didn't have to isolate. I was treated as fully vaccinated and was free to travel all over Poland, and I did. I then came back to this country, the United Kingdom, 11 days later, didn't have to quarantine in a red list hotel. I was then mandated to do the 10 days home isolation, but of course I had to get from Heathrow to Canary Wharf. I mean, it's ridiculous, it's stupid. It is just restrictions, quite frankly, to appease the more excited elements in the media and some of those in the country which is demanding that this never ever ends. We were promised irreversible. We live in a liberal democracy. It is not appropriate in any circumstances to bring these absurd travel restrictions in. And in my opinion, we're now in a situation where de facto we have an international travel ban. Because let's be honest, if you're a family of 4 or 5 people, you ain't travelling this Christmas anywhere, whether it be Southern Africa, America, or continental Europe, because most families simply haven't got £600-700 to waste on these tests. And I just think it's completely unacceptable.
I think what's happening here is we will start to see a snowball effect. Now it's about confidence. That's what it's always been with us, is how do we instill confidence in people to travel? I think that's gone out the window. What we're now going to see is people in droves cancelling. I don't know if anyone's aware of this, but as travel agents, we live on pure commission. So every booking that is now refunded means we've worked for free. We've earned zero. I don't know which other sector works for free, basically. That's what it's going to be now. But let me give you something that's very interesting that I would say is the motivation behind all of this. I do think there needs to be measures. I do think there needs to be controls. I just don't think we found the right ones. It's financially motivated. It's not rational. So, and as a prime example, Stephen, I had a client who had to travel, and it happened that they were traveling actually to Nigeria. So they came from the USA via England, via UK, and were then going on to Nigeria. And it so happened that their day 5 test that they could choose as a test to release landed on the same day as the fit to fly to go to Nigeria. Now, common sense, you would think that one test would be sufficient because it would prove that they were negative for COVID, right? No. Called 119 and they advised that they must have a day 5 test to release and they must have a fit to fly. 2 tests to establish that it's negative. When I challenged and asked why they needed 2 tests, they said because the certificate titles needed to be unique. You needed one certificate to say test to release and you needed one certificate to say fit to fly. What's the logic and common sense around that other than motivation of profit?
Yeah, well, there are obvious questions around that. But Benedetta, look, I get it that you're trying to survive financially. I get it that it must be just heart-wrenching, this, where you're being pulled from pillar to post in the travel industry is. But the bottom line is, Benedetta, that people traveling around the world must be one of the drivers of some of these infections. It just must be. And at Christmas
there's definitely a correlation. There's definitely a correlation that they contribute. So, and I wouldn't say they contribute. Hang on, Stephen. I wouldn't say they contribute to the volume of COVID cases. I would say what they contribute is variance. There has been stats published that travel is more variant bringing into countries than the increase you're seeing in the UK.
But it's a different variance that is causing alarm, isn't it? Because we get
completely understand. Completely agree with that and completely agree that there should be measures. My challenge is this is not the right approach. That's my challenge. I'm not against people having some kind of control, like you say, mitigants. It's sensible, but I think this is extreme now, and it's just going to snowball.
I can't remember which of the two of you said this, but look, the confidence that is being knocked out of the travel industry, it's just, when are you going to recover from this? I'm a traveller, I'm a tourist.
COVID won't go away.
Yeah, I've been saying tonight, look, I'm going to travel on Boxing Day, and I'm in the brink of cancelling it because it's the unknown. It's the what if.
Because if you think about it, we're dealing with African countries right now, but as we know, the pandemic, it will not stay within African countries. It isn't currently within African countries. So other countries will be picked up. It's common sense. So there needs to be some support in place, basically. If that's the approach the government wants to take, they need to support the sector. That's where I come down to it at the end of the day.
Thank you for talking to me both. Really interesting. Thank you. The 11 o'clock news is coming next. Then we're going to look at all the front pages and deal with this Chris Como story. He's sacked from CNN. That's all coming up next.